And as of this time, as of this date, Israel's genocide in Gaza has killed at least 45,854 Palestinians. It's also wounded 109,139 Palestinians. That's since October 7th. And it's important when you talk about casualty reports. Casualties aren't just people that die. They're also people that are injured. They're also people that die from injuries. So it's all that stuff. You're talking about casualty reports that are very, very conservatively at 155. But we know that there's a gross undercounting. We know they're not counting the people under the rubble. We know they're not counting people who are dying from sort of secondary traumas. We know that they're just grossly undercounting. We know all of these things, and yet we're still looking at one of the most devastating, one of the most egregious, one of the most indefensible, one of the most morally reprehensible contraventions of international law that we've seen in a very long time. We're not having no Olympic competition here. We're going to talk about what's happening in Darfur. We're going to talk about what's happening throughout Sudan. We're going to talk about what's happening in Congo and Haiti. All of these places are atrocious, morally atrocious. But I focus on Gaza because it's my area of expertise, but also because the United States is actively funding this genocide, and it's something that we need to talk about, particularly on a day like today, when the U.S. envoy, Amos Hochstein, says that the Israeli military will be withdrawing completely from southern Lebanon after it withdrew from another of the nearly 60 border villages its troops are currently operating in. But Mr. Hochstein does not confirm if the Israeli pullout will be completed within the 60-day deadline of the ceasefire deal with Hezbollah. As always, there are open question marks about whether the Israeli military is going to follow the very argument, the very commitment, the very treaty, the very promises that they made. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Also, it'll be interesting to see what happens if they do not complete the full withdrawal of troops before the end of the ceasefire deal, and what that means, because there's always a tendency to make it look as if Hezbollah or Hamas or Nasrallah, or whomever are always the violators of the peace and the violators of the treaties. In truth, that has never, ever, 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 ever been the case. So I just want y'all to understand that and think about that as we talk about what's going on in Gaza. Israel's military has also launched a manhunt in the occupied West Bank after gunmen killed 3 Israelis near an illegal settlement in the Qalqilia governorate. I'm always fascinated at the extent to which the media representations or the media narratives will talk about the death of Israelis with a greater level of urgency and concern and moral authority than they do the death of Palestinians. I mean, this begins with 1,139 people killed in Israel, not all of them Israeli, but somehow that's been used to justify the killing of tens of thousands. For those that don't know the story, 3 Israelis were killed, 8 others were injured in a shooting attack near the illegal West Bank settlement of Kedumim. If you've never been to Kedumim, it's an important settlement to actually look at for a few reasons. We can talk about that. Israeli media outlets cited security officials as saying at least 2 Palestinian gunmen opened fire at cars and a bus outside the settlement before fleeing the scene on Monday. The shooting killed 2 women in their 70s, as well as a 35-year-old police investigator from the illegal settlement of Ariel. Now, this incident comes, according to Al Jazeera, as the war rages on in Gaza amid efforts to reach a truth deal. Now, here's what's interesting. This happens in the West Bank. We've already seen what's happened in Gaza. The Gaza Strip has been demolished, devastated for 15 months now. Now you have Bezalel Smotrich. If you don't know Bezalel Smotrich, he's not just the Israeli finance minister. He is one of the faces and voices of the Israeli right, the Israeli extreme right, the Israeli far right. And basically what Smotrich said, in fact, I'll tell you exactly what Smotrich said. He said, El Funduk, Nablus, and Jenin need to look like Jabalia. In other words, he's saying that Israel needs to turn the West Bank into Gaza. They need to basically destroy Gaza because 3 Israelis were killed. Now, what's interesting in the Jabalia area and the refugee camp there has been one of the most prominent sites of violence and one of the most consistent places that have been pointed to as evidence of genocide and ethnic cleansing. So he's basically saying we should go into the West Bank and do the same thing. How could you justify that? How could you justify that? And he frames it all as terrorism, right? The terrorism in the West Bank and the terrorism from Gaza. He didn't say the West Bank. I'm sure he said Judea and Samaria. I'm getting a translation, but he said the terrorism in the West Bank and the terrorism from Gaza and Iran is the same terrorism, and it must be defeated. One thing that they don't like is nuance and complexity. It's a fascinating, incredibly fascinating situation. But I want to keep talking about this, y'all. Y'all good? Hit the like button, man. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm gonna take 3 seconds to take some of these pills. Because I am in extraordinary pain right now. So I took 3, that's 600 milligrams, and I'm finna take this one, and hopefully that'll get me through the night. And if it don't, I'm blaming y'all, because some of y'all told me this was okay. So we'll find out. We'll find out. Anyway, a lot going on. I want to talk about, not tonight because I want to bring in some media experts, but on this particular issue. But I want to talk about what's going on with Al Jazeera in the West Bank as well. But also, Israel's relentless bombardment of Gaza continues, according to Al Jazeera, with 6 people, including a child, killed in its latest attacks on residential buildings, taking the toll from assaults on Monday to at least 28. Also, the World Food Program has condemned Israel after its forces shot at a clearly marked envoy carrying 8 staff members near the Wadi Reza checkpoint in the Gaza Strip on Sunday. These are fascinating. Whenever the World Food Program or some of these other international organizations lose staff members or they lose people, there seems to be a kind of international response. And I appreciate it. I mean, it is awful and it is evil, and it does point to how indifferent the Israeli nation state or military forces can be to humanity, to civilians, to Palestinians, to pro-Palestinian advocates, etc. All of that is part of the conversation. All of that is part of the mix. So so we will continue to cover that. We'll continue to talk about that. But I want to make sure that we at least begin from this baseline understanding, which is that the media representations, the political discourse, and Israeli statecraft all reflect this sense that Palestinian lives simply are not worth as much.